You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts, Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again to dive back into what is usually our bi-weekly options extravaganza known as the Option Block. You're only getting one dose this week because markets, of course, were closed for the Memorial Day holiday here in the U.S. Don't blame me. Blame the markets. There's no Option Block show on Monday, but we're back at you on Thursday to catch you up on all things options going on this week. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com. as well as, of course, from the ever-exciting network upon which so many of you have been mainlining these days. A lot of stuff coming at you this week, even though we were off for Monday, made up with it with a great pro Q&A on Tuesday for all you pro folks over there. Got the once in future and now present Dr. VVIX. He's been jumping around to a lot of international vol conferences lately. He gave us the lowdown on those as well as answered all of your many and varied vol questions. Made some interesting, perhaps a little bit argumentative statements about crypto and vol and the sell-off and a few other things. You want to hear those for yourselves? TheOptionsInsider.com/pro is the place to go. Also, some interesting thoughts about how much of this retail wave we've been talking about in the options world is actually retail. So intriguing stuff there. You want to check that one out, TheOptionsInsider.com/pro, or for you cool kids, /secret club. You want to get in there. In fact, you wanted to be in there already because it's almost time, listeners, to choose the winner of our pro trading crate for the month of May. First, let me go around the horn and welcome on my cohorts, my partners in crime. Let's go out first to the dark, stormy, menacing shores of Maine, where we are joined once again by the rockingest of lobsters. He's finally back in Maine after being stuck in Chicago for, I believe, 6 months. None other than the rock lobster himself, Mr. Andrew GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com. Mr. G, welcome back to the show. How go things on the dark and stormy shores, sir?
It's actually, the sun just came out, and it's not as dark and stormy as it was this morning. It was quite dark and stormy and a little chilly.
A little chilly. There you go. So let's call it dark, stormy, and chilly. How about that? Let's just keep the narrative flowing as we go out to the lands that are never dark and stormy because they have that nice little weather shield protecting them 24/7. It is, of course, St. Charles, Illinois, where we are joined once again by the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management. Uncle Mike, welcome back to the program to you as well, sir.
Always a pleasure to be here.
It is indeed a pleasure to be here on the Option Block as we kick off our first segment. It is time for the Trading Block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the Trading Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Trading Block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading. We're back in that kind of zone, listeners. Well, the markets are kind of trying to figure out what they want to be. Of course, we had dipped well below the 4,000 level, a little bit above the level a lot of you said you wanted to buy in, which is around the 3,700 level. Didn't quite get there. Of course, we have rallied since then. We have seen some days of sell-offs, and then the market's trying to mitigate those. Seems like the bulls are trying to fight their way through. They are fighting their way through today. The S&P up over 1%, about 1.15%. The NASDAQ up 2%. The Dow up about almost 0.2%. So the S&P closing in on 4150 now. So well back north of the 4,000 level, but also well below the highs from back late last year. Of course, all that green on the screen means the vol markets are down yet again. We've got the VIX at about a 24.5 when we kicked off the show. Puts it down about 3 points. Remember, not from Monday's show, but from all the way back a week ago. It's the last time we gathered here together on the old option block program. VVIX, so the vol of vol, this one is getting back into historically interesting territory because, of course, VVIX back below 100 now for the first time. And you got to go back over a year to find the last time we were below 100. And that was a very brief period. We've already been down here for a better part of a week now. And before that, you have to go all the way back to, I believe it was September of 2020. So you're really only talking pretty much 2 to 3 moments in the last 2.5 years, pretty much since the onset of the pandemic, where we have been below 100 in VVIX. It's very brief flirtations with these levels. In fact, that has inspired our question of the week, which is live right now, listeners. You guys can go and play along over there at Options to make your voice heard. Right now, we're asking you the vol of vol itself, a.k.a. VVIX, back below 100 for the first time in over a year. Is this the start of a new volatility regime for the market, or just the calm before the next volatility storm? Gave you 3 choices this time to kind of give you a little bit of a curveball. Yes, this is the start of a new vol regime. No, this is the calm before the storm. Or you find vol of vol very confusing. We'll reveal the results a little bit later in the show. Let's go around the horn now. VVIX, of course, 89. VXX, so starting to try to emulate the VIX futures again, down to 21.85, down a little over a point, about 1.15 points. UVXY, the former name a lot of folks like to play in terms of getting short a lot of vol. Right now, that trade is working out. It's down nearly 2 points, about 1.85 points, down to about 13.15 when we kicked off the show. SVIX, so our inverse vol friend, 11.75, up a full point from where it was this time last week. And UVIX at about a 15.10, that puts it down a little over 3, about 3.15 points from this time last week. Remember, that's the 2X levered VIX product. And not to be outdone, vol Q, the at-the-money vol of the NASDAQ 100, at about a 29.5 when we kicked off the show. Puts it down about 2.5 points. Let's go back to the dark and stormy shores. Mr. Rock Lobster, sir, what is lighting up your tape? It's been a week since we've chatted here on the show. So what's been lighting up your tape as the markets have kind of gone mostly up and a little bit down, and some sideways too? Why not?
Well, I think in this, I'll be interested to hear TOSAW's take on this, but Microsoft says their revenue, they're guided down on revenue and for their quarter with a month to go. So they're not expecting much. So I thought that was, and the Qs today up 2% because of that.
That's awesome
so
news. Let's all buy Softy, baby.
Exactly. So the biggest dog in the biggest one of, well, if it's not the biggest, it's definitely the top 3 in the biggest, right? Dogs in the Q, now it's only down $1.35. So either, and Biden had a talk, he and Powell, or I guess on Tuesday, they sang the union song and made nice, and he's like, I trust the Fed to do everything necessary on inflation, which basically means they're not doing anything. And so I feel there is some sort of policy certainty there. Like the market has waffled up and down a little bit, but I think at this point, it just feels like the market is expecting like earnings to be not as good this quarter. We marked stocks down 20% from the top. Most of frothy tech has been slaughtered. I mean, there's probably how many stocks with a multiple are left? Like Apple's at what, a 24 PE now? Let me see here. Microsoft is probably right around there now, 270. So what is it back down to, like a 25 PE, X all their cash. So it's a 28 PE, and they have $14 of cash on their balance sheet. So down to 250. So yeah, so 25. So that multiple has been reduced. Doesn't mean it can't go down more. Apple's multiple has been way reduced. They're down to a 24 X cash, probably like a 19, something like that. Netflix, let's say it's another one, right? Netflix cut in half, right? So all of a sudden, Netflix is an 18 PE stock now. PayPal was that down 60%, 65, 70% from the top. So whatever it is, like all these Q stocks, they've gotten hit pretty darn good from the top, right? Pretty good smack. The more, I would say the more high flyers, 80% of the market value lost from the highs of last year. So there's that. Definitely the market did not waste any time in just shredding those those companies. There's probably a couple with a little bit like AMD.
Are you slamming Oatly again? Are you talking about Oatly?
Oh, AMD still got a multiple, I would say, pretty high. NVIDIA pretty high, although demand for their products now is incredibly high. Like they can't sell enough of what they have. Like they can't make enough. So, okay, we got that. We've got high oil prices. We have inflation. OPEC says they're gonna do some pumping. Okay. So I guess the short answer is we have from a vol point of view, we still have a 24. We're still in the danger zone. It's hard to believe. I think Mark will be doing vol views tomorrow. It depends. If he's going, he's got anyway. So, but you might be playing the danger zone song tomorrow. I guess what is that? 5 weeks in a row, 6 weeks in a row, 7 weeks in a row. That's quite a bit.
Kenny's collecting a lot of checks these days. That's all I'm saying. Between that and the Top Gun movie, I'm assuming the new Top Gun movie must use this song again. Otherwise, it's not officially a Top Gun.
Well, apparently not that much.
Really? There's no danger zone in the new movie?
I think the only gripe with the movie was that they didn't use the song that much.
Did you see it? Did you go see it?
No, I just been reading the reviews on it.
Our listeners went and saw it. They said they liked it. So I actually want to go see it just for, I haven't been to a movie in probably 10 years. The last movie I went to see just Empire Strikes Back.
How backwards I am was that stupid silent movie that won the Best Picture 10 years ago. I think that was the last time I was in a movie theater watching a movie. That was like the most ridiculous Best Picture winner. What was it called? The movie or the show? I don't know.
Silent movie.
What an awful, stupid movie. Anyway.
That was a poor choice to make it to your return to theaters, sir. But hey, I guess Top Gun coming out of retirement will get you back in the theaters, sir.
Yes, I think it will. Anyway, so what we have is, okay, what do we have? So from a vol point of view, VIX is still 24. 9-day VIX, though, is finally starting to drift a little lower. Today, we had quite a range. SPY 407 this morning, and it's currently 413. So, almost a 2% range intraday once again. I think almost every day this week, we've managed to have a 2% range intraday. And it just feels like the market does not want to give that up. Like if we trade 420 tomorrow, it's not going to surprise me. If we go back to 405, it's not going to surprise. Like none of these kind of market moves are really super surprising. And 9-day VIX is around 24. So you're starting to get there's some sort of acceptance of where we are, at least from a vol point of view. But under any other time, we would still be in pretty high vol in the top quartile of volatility. So, today everything looks rosy, and apparently, I guess everybody's happy because we haven't been any big changes or anything. But again, from a vol point of view, we have a little bit of contango. We have a little bit of curve starting to normalize, but at a 24 VIX, which until, let's say, 2020, 2021, that's not something we normally had, kind of that, contango style curve where there's so much volatility still predicted on the back end. So, until we drop out of zone 4, again, this is a great inflection point for a vol trade because normally when we get to a lower zone, we tend to break down to the bottom of the zone because everybody's like, oh, okay, the sky is clear. And, VIX can move from 24 to 18 pretty fast when it wants to do that. So I would just say that's kind of what I'm like from a vol point of view, what I see if we get kind of this, okay, well, things aren't great, but they're not going to zero either. And we'll try to, get things together. So I guess the biggest thing about Biden's speech on Tuesday is that they did not have any great ideas to try to fix some of the problems that they already sort of created. And it wouldn't surprise me to see that Janet Yellen gets the door before the next election. Before the midterm elections, and she will be the inflation scapegoat.
She is the one taking the heat, right? She's like, oh, she's coming out and putting herself out there as kind of the bit of the scapegoat, which, your Treasury Secretary, you should take some of that heat. But yes, that does seem like she's going to be the one throwing herself on the old sword.
Yes, I think so. So anyway, I'm curious to see what TOSAW has to say about this market, because clearly we're still not up, nowhere close to up for the year, not even close as far as SPY goes. So there is plenty of room, there's plenty of room to make things happen. Let me see here. I'm just trying to get my 1 year. Yeah, we started the year, hard to believe. Yeah, we were 480 at the beginning of the year. So the market has taken some heat off. Again, I thought when we talked about 3750 was kind of that area. We traded down to 3800. And things kind of bounce from there. So, and mostly because I think things, it appeared, did not get worse, right? So the oil squeeze is mostly, I think most people could agree now, was created, right? It was created because you're embargoing the Russians, we're messing up the oil markets. The lockdowns contributed a lot to, the lockdowns in China contributed a lot to like sort of the product squeeze. Also Russian wheat or Ukrainian wheat not being able to get out. There's all these things that this nasty little war is helping to mess up. So, but at least as right now the market's like, well, at least not getting worse. And I think that's kind of where we are. We're at the point where at least it's not getting worse. So what does VIX do when we're not getting worse? And generally when we're not getting worse, vol tends to get a little lower. So that would not surprise me in the least.
Not getting worse. So buy all the stocks, sir. That's what it means.
Well, that's what's happening.
By the way, our chat is informing me that movie you saw was called The Artist. So,
yes. And it's
of all the movies I would have picked for you to return to theaters, The Artist, the black and white.
By the way, and I saw that 10 years ago.
That's why you haven't been in theaters in a decade. You went and saw that one.
You're right. I saw that. I'm like, that is the biggest waste of money ever. I'm just, whatever's on TV, I'll watch.
I haven't seen that one. I know Crash was a pretty bad Best Picture winner. So that one's up there for me in terms of my least favorite Oscar winner out there.
Dude, go watch The Artist with your wife, and you can and then we can discuss it next week.
Isn't that Michael Fassbender? I like him. He was pretty good as Magneto, so I'll have to check him out as the art. I believe he was in that one. But I digress. We can talk silent film for days here on the network. But instead, let's go out to the land of St. Charles, where Uncle Mike is waiting with bated breath to get at you folks. He's been off for a week. He's got a lot to say. Uncle Mike, what do you have in store for us today, sir?
You bet I got something to say. So first off, Top Gun, it is a 10. Go see it. It was a phenomenal
Oh, you saw
movie.
it? Awesome. So there you go. A review on the network. Our chat was saying they liked it. The big question, is there a danger zone in the movie?
I'm not going to give any spoilers except go see it.
Oh.
I'm not saying anything.
This is crazy. All these positive reviews for Top Gun sequel. I had literally no desire to see this thing, and just all the wave of positivity is going to suck me into the theaters. That everyone's loving this thing. It's got like a 98 on Rotten Tomatoes or something crazy.
If you liked Top Gun, you'll like this. I mean, the one thing I did like the original better because, well, the original is always better.
Who doesn't like
sequel.
Top Gun? Come on.
With the exception of The Empire Strikes Back, the original is always better than the sequel. So that's the cool thing about it. But just the fighter scenes, the special effects, things like that. I mean, they did pretty much the best that they could, considering there was nearly a 40-year gap between films. So
yeah, is this the longest we ever between sequels for a film franchise? It has to be, right?
I would think so, because when did Top Gun come out? 86. So yeah, it would have been like 36 years between the movies. So I was a big fan of it. I thought that they did a really good job of it. I'm not going to say anything else because I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but I was definitely a big fan. And so I'd even almost go see it again. I thought it was that cool. It was if you get goosebumps when you see, just from the first movie, when you see Tom Cruise give that salute before he goes off to war, when he's in the cockpit and he's just and he does that to the guy that gives him the clearance for takeoff. I mean, to me, it's like, all right, let's go fight the bad guys. And so you get that feeling a lot in this movie too. So I liked it a lot. So, but in terms of the markets, right now we are down about 12 points from the close of last week. So on the week, we're down 12 points. Of course, we're up a little over 1% today. So it's kind of been an exciting road to nowhere so far this week. We've gone up, we've gone down. We really haven't gone up that much. Futures were above the 4,200 mark on Memorial Day for a little bit, but for a brief period, not very long. And then we went down. We had a couple of new highs on the cash a few times this week. And then, of course, today we did go with a low of 40.74 on the SPX. So we have definitely been having a lot of movement throughout the day. That's for sure. These are definitely not markets for the faint-hearted, whether you're a bull or a bear. We've had a little bit of a sell-off in the 10-year this week, so we have come down a little bit there. And then ultimately, what I think is kind of interesting right now is that if you are a market bull, is now the time to sell your energy and buy your technology. Just the thought behind it is oil's not going to go up forever and technology's not going to go down forever. Are we at that point as of yet? That's a question I'd pose to the listeners at this stage, and just something to look at while you're doing things. The other thing that we have going on today, silver is up 38 cents on the day, SLV at 20.51 on the day. So we do have some movement there. In terms of the market in general, I think that the next stumbling block or the next point that we have to get over at this stage is the 4,200 level. It's another key number. And if you look at it, we've talked about the 4,200 level. If you remember what seems like an eternity ago, just a couple of months ago, is can the market hold 4,200? Can it hold 4,200? And then, of course, it didn't. But now I think the question needs to be, can it get over 4,200? Because we had a lot of points there. We had a point there where it was kind of at support in June a year ago. It kind of stopped there and bounced back in March. And then, of course, we sat there for a while in late April, early May. Now we need to get through it. That's kind of a big stopping point, or I think not stopping point, but a big barrier that we're going to need to get through if we want to go higher. So I'm of the belief, and Mark made me say it last week on the show, he fooled me. He gave me some tomfoolery and said it was just me and him talking, but I think it was more than just me and him, of if I really felt we were at a bottom. But I really feel that Friday the 20th, that may have been our bottom. So I even went out on a limb and gave my 50% guarantee on it and everything. So we'll see where we're at in terms of what I'm doing. I don't have a ton of exposure on the table right now just because the market is still negative on the year. I had this complex call spread that I had where it was just beyond a call spread, and I had hedges, I had this, that, and the other, to where if the markets did go straight down, it would be like a 0.05% loss, or I forget what it was on the year, and I had as a leap. But for right now, a couple weeks ago, I bought back all of the short premium and puts and hedges just because I couldn't really make that much more money on it. So if for some reason we do come back to the 4,500 level, there's going to be a whole lot of grinning going on, mostly by me. So that's what I'm doing right now, and that's where we are at.
That is where we are at, indeed. We're at that portion in the show, listeners, where we have to break down some numbers. Before we get there, Uncle Mike, because you are so charitable in calling your bottoms. By the way, you are joining a growing chorus of people on the network who are calling a bit of a bottom here. We had the Oracle of New Hampshire, Mr. Matt from ORATS. He called something similar. Mr. Once and Future, Dr. VIX, he said he's all back in on the market now. I'm trying to think if Dan over there on OBC did as well. But yeah, a growing number of people seem to be joining. I got Dan Gramza coming up a little bit later on CHWY. I'll be very curious to get his thoughts on these overall equity levels as well. But you are joining, I should say, a growing chorus. Speaking of things that are growing, sir, it is that time. It is that time, listeners. It is June 2nd, so it is time to pay off and give away our Options Insider Pro Trading Crate for the month of May. So everybody listening there in the live, everybody listening at home, you pull out your tickets. And by tickets, I mean your virtual ticket. You don't have an actual ticket, of course. If you're in the pro, you automatically have a ticket in your hot little hand. So, Uncle Mike, when I say go, I'm going to start running my random number generator. And then you are going to tell me to stop, and then we shall see who that determines is the winner for the May. Man, we got so much stuff. I came back from OIC. We already had a whole freaking storage area full of stuff, or vault. And now we've added more. So, yes, there's a lot of stuff to give away. Mr. Uncle Mike, okay, I've hit the button. It is flashing. You tell me when to stop, sir.
Not yet. Not yet. Not yet. Now!
Ooh, okay, I got it. Luckily, very fast reaction time over here. All right, there we go. And who does that correspond to? That is Neil Krishnan from sunny New Jersey. Neil, congratulations on winning the May Pro Trading Crate. Don't see you in the live too often, so you have to join us in there if possible, sir. Get those questions in for the Pro Q&As. We love to hear from all of you folks. We know a lot of you have to listen on the Pro podcast feed. We love you all over there as well. Make sure if you're doing that, you keep getting your questions in for the Pro Q&As and everything else we have going on. Maybe you have a weird trade you saw. You want us to talk about it, dissect it a bit on Options Oddities. Get it in. Hit us up. Let us know. Our producers are going to hit you up, Neil, and get your shirt size for your cool exclusive Options Insider gear. Going to get your educational reading item of choice for options learning, and then we're going to add a whole bunch of other fun stuff, bespoke one-off items in there, and that will be heading off to sunny New Jersey very soon. Everyone else, keep on playing. We got more Pro Trading Crates coming up for you folks. Let's see what's coming up really quickly as well. Let's do our quick rundown here of ye old markets. VIX doing a little bit of paper right now, 278,000 contracts on the tape. The ADV right now, 591. So still flirting with that 600K level, not quite breaking it. SPY, about almost 3.6 million contracts on the tape right now. The ADV about 7.3. So SPY pretty much hanging out right around half of its ADV. The S, 1.13 million. The ADV, 2.16. So the S a little bit north of halfway. Small caps, at least from the IWM lens, also pretty much almost exactly half of their ADV. The 410,000 contracts on the tape right now. The ADV, 805. And the Qs, 1.3 million, the ADV 2.88. So the Qs actually lagging behind a little bit. Let's go out to the single name, see what's lighting it up. A decently active day, all things considered, but not really blowing the doors off. Only cost you 193,000 contracts to break into the top 10 right now. That gets you to GameStop. GameStop back in the top 10. We were asking, I think, on the show last week, are the apes back? That's meme crowd, but they like to play in GameStop as well. GameStop up 10.25% again today. My goodness, this thing had quite the run. It got up to 142 last week, then down to looks like 117, now back up to 133.5. Good for 193,000 contracts. Number 9, this good old Nikola. Remember, we were talking about them on the last show, and we talked about Nikola, one of the names that peaked on June 8th. Nikola up about almost half a buck or 6.25% today, trading 216,000 contracts. So number 9. Number 8, it's the Amazonians. What's going on out there? They're good for 232,000 contracts, up 57 handles or about 2.3%. Number 7, these are the true apes out there. It is AMC with 272,000 contracts. I even did it. AMC up 60 cents or about 4.6% to 1340. Again, good for number 7 on our countdown here. Number 6, the old FB. Pretty much did that ends in Y. Facebook's going to be hanging out in there. Right now, up 9 handles or almost 5%, trading almost 198. Good for 343,000 contracts. Number 5, the aforementioned Softy, good old Microsoft, saying things suck, but the stock not really looking that terrible, off only 0.5% or about $1.25, right around 271. It got as low today as 261.60. So pretty much almost 10 handles off the low. So Microsoft reporting crappy numbers and nobody cares. That's like the early days of the pandemic. 395,000 contracts. Good for number 5 is Softy. Number 4, NVIDIA. 518,000 contracts, jumping up quite a bit there. Number 3, AMD. So AMD and NVIDIA still hanging out at their normal spots. AMD, number 3, 627,000. Number 2. Yes, I said number 2. It's the fruit company. 925,000 contracts, 150 even, up about 1%. Let's see, in the last week, this thing's up almost 10%, 9.25%, over 12 handles in the last 5 days. So good little run here for Apple. And then number 1 with a bullet today, listeners, Tesla taking the top spot away from Apple. 1.13 million contracts, up 43.5 handles, nearly 6%, 783, almost 784 for Tesla. They've had a nice run as well. They were 661 our last show last week. So it's been quite the run for Tesla out there as well. Let's see on the earnings front what's going on. We are kind of winding down a bit. Salesforce was on Tuesday, HP as well. The aforementioned GameStop on Wednesday, as well as CHWY. And then today we have Hormel, Sienna, Land's End, maker of our exclusive Options Insider gear, as well as Duluth Trading, Lululemon, and Samsung. And we've got, let's see, got some new reports coming in right hot off the presses, right before showtime. CHWY was right after the bell last night, listeners. They went into their announcement, $23.50. They were pricing in, get this, 16.3%. That's a lot of juice, but they outperformed. They delivered 19.1%. So extra juice for CHWY. Duluth Trading, they were today before the bell. 12.66 is where they were as of their announcement, or going into the announcement, I should say. They're pricing in 9.3%. They delivered, get this, listeners, 0.9. Wow. That's a pretty good premium right there in Duluth Trading. Well, let's go on out to, let's see, after the bell today, we've got LULU, $289.96. They were trading, they were pricing in, I should say, $28.50. In the past, they've moved 16. So not quite 2x, pretty darn close for Lululemon. Wow, that's a heck of a lot of juice. We've got more earnings move results and stuff coming up. Check them out for yourselves at theoptionsinsider.com. We got to get on rolling with ye old program. The season right now hanging out at 83%. So that's a little light, listeners. The average right now, pretty much since the start of the pandemic, has been 88%. So we're looking kind of light. And it's these last couple of weeks that are kind of dragging us back down. The last week, 81%. Week 1, of course, pretty bad, 64%. Week 2, 70%. Week 3, 98%. It was over 100%. I think they've revised that down. Week 4, 82%. Week 5, 87%. And week 6, as I said, 81%. All of that averaging out to 83%. So looking a little light on the earnings vol front. Some new trades being exited in Duluth and a few others. They close out a straddle in Duluth and some other names out here. They close out a short straddle in another name. So check out the earnings trades reports as well. TheOptionsInsider.com is the place to go. Meanwhile, we got to get on going out of here. Before we do that really quickly, let's just hit the numbers for OCC listeners. We got the numbers in from our friends at OCC. Hot off the presses, the question we've all been asking, can the party continue? And so far, the answer is still a resounding yes. The numbers coming out pretty much this morning. OCC May numbers up 19.7% from May of last year. Again, the highest May on record here. What is the total? Total volume, 866.5 million contracts. Again, that's up nearly 20% from this time last year. A year-to-date ADV through the end of May, 41.7 million contracts. That's up 6%. So that's looking good for my prediction that we are going to at least mildly eclipse last year's numbers. ETF options up 64%. Index options up 49%. So big jumps in those sections. That surprise you? Hit us up. Let us know as we keep on rolling. It is time to unleash the beast. It is time for the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, let's do it. Let us unleash the beast, see where it fixes its fiery gaze today. Well, it looks like we once again, someone was asking recently, I forgot what show, if it was this show or Boot Camp or maybe Oddities, if we are seeing a lot more, maybe OPR, we are seeing a lot more puts on the tape these days. And certainly it is growing easier to find large lots of puts out there these days, especially buying puts, than it is the old, what we used to see last year, the large lots of call buying. Not to say it doesn't exist, but let's look at today's odd block yet again for an example. Today we're kicking things off in Park Hotels and Resorts, ticker symbol PK. This is obviously a hotel and resort chain headquartered out of Virginia, trading right now $18.72. A year ago, they were $21.14. They hit their high for the year shortly thereafter. Oh, what day could it have been? Yes, June 8th. Yet again, listeners. My goodness. Here we go again. Another name to be added to the dossier for research purposes. Park Hotels and Resorts. June 8th, $22.42. And then they kind of sold off down to about $17 in August, then rallied back up almost to their high, not quite, on November 5th, $21.12. Then they sold off hard again to $15.57. That was their low for the year on December 1st. This is a pretty volatile Parks and Resorts name. And they shot back up again to almost $20 in January. And then they've done this dance between 20 and about 17. Oh, looks like 3 times since January before selling off again to 16.10 recently. And then rallying that was on May 24th. And then rallying all the way back up to where they are right now, 18.72 today. So it's like they're on track to do it again for the maybe 5th time since January. Quite an interesting, perhaps range-bound name. I know a lot of our traders like that stuff. What do we find out here today? Looks like someone, listeners, is maybe worried that they might be breaking out of this range sometime soon to the dark side, because someone came in this morning doing the old put scoopage. 10,000 of the July 17 half puts. That's right at the bottom end of that range, listeners. For 83 cents. They didn't quite lift the offer. They got a little bit of a better fill. These were pretty wide, 65 at 90, which again, it's Park Hotels and Resorts. It's not Apple. So you're going to be a little bit wide. They ended up getting them for 83 cents. So that's not a bad fill, all things considered. This is a 52 vol. If you're wondering, the stock was about a dime lower, 18.61 when these went up. These expire before earnings. The next announcement is on August 4th. So Mr. Rock Lobster, this is kind of the new trade du jour here for 2022. Massive chunks of puts. Massive put paloozas to the downside. This time we got the July 17 halves in Park Hotels and Resorts. What say you, sir?
You know what I find interesting about these puts is that
you bought another 1,000 to follow them up. You love this trade.
They're offered at 80 cents afterwards.
Yes, well, that happens when the stock rallies a little bit and you buy maybe a little bit too much.
It's a bit of a. I feel like it's a bit of a smack. So clearly, paying 83 cents. Did Henry call this as an opening purchase? I mean, I definitely was on the high side of the offer.
But yes, it is opening. Yes, it is opening.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, opening. It's definitely an opening. But purchase. That's an interesting. It's an interesting naked purchase for this stock. So like it has made, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4 trips to like 16 and a half.
Yeah, this thing has bounced off this level like 4 times in the last 4 months. I mean,
right.
Knowing nothing else, just looking at this chart, I would want to sell the hell out of these.
Well, kind of, yeah, because this is like, it doesn't like going below $16, right? So this is, all I would say is it's an interesting trade. I'm not sure that they're going to end up being happy with the result, though, I have to say.
They're looking for something pretty apocalyptic to happen pretty quickly. So
yeah.
Again, it was down that level not that long ago, so it could just retrace. But if I was looking at this chart and then had to guess what the paper was, it would not be this.
I agree. I think that, you would think that, hey, thing trades around $17 and then you sell these puts again. So it's a bit of an odd one, I have to say.
Well, if you're not quite sated yet in massive put trades in property-related names, then don't worry, we got you covered. Got another one here. We're going out to Starwood Property Trust now, headquartered out of Greenwich, CT. And I do believe this is a REIT. And I don't know exactly what types of properties they invest in, but looking here, they're trading 23.76 right now, ticker symbol STWD. And then a year ago, 25.70 was where they were trading. They got up to their high for the year. Oh, we missed it, listeners, by 3 days. The high for the year was $27 on June 11th. I've got the listener, one of our pro listeners wrote in saying, is that June 8th thing still a thing? Yeah, so far it seems to be even more of a thing, which is crazy. All right, then it sold off to September 10th, 24.5. Then it rallied back up on November 24th, 26.25. Then it got just the crap smacked out of it, to use a technical term. Went from 26.25 on November all the way down to, by December 20th, it was 21.88. So they came for this thing pretty hard. That was the biggest move of the year by far. But then they kind of rebounded. By January 11th, they're back up to about 25.5. And then they sold off again. These REITs are getting volatile. 22.40 they went down to from 25.5. So sold off about $3 again. Then it rallied again up to looks like about 24.77. This is a similar chart to the other one. A lot of peak to trough moves, but unlike the last one, this one, each subsequent move seems to be a little bit smaller, a little bit more muted. The other one has kept bouncing between about 17 and 20 odd for the last 4 months. This one, they kind of do more muted bounces, but they have been bouncing quite a bit. To where we find them right now, 23.77. And what did our Eye of Sauron find? A similar trade. The July 22 puts this time. So these are $1.75 out of the money, going up 9,901 times. These were, unlike our other name, this was a little bit tighter market, only a dime wide. And they had to pay through the offer to get it done. They had to pay 47 cents. They were offered at 45. That's a 30 vol, if you're wondering, listeners. And they did it 9,901 times for 47 cents. The stock was pretty much right here, 23.70, about a dime lower. And let's see, again, there are no earnings. People are paying up for these puts, but they're not getting them all the way through earnings. In this case, they only had to go a few more weeks out. They had to go to the August 4th expiration. So if there are weeklies in this, which I'm guessing maybe there aren't, they could have, I guess they didn't want to go out another month and pay that premium. But yeah, Mr. Rock Lobster, 2 for 2 here on folks who are perhaps spooked about the near-term prospects of some property-related names, sir. Scoop and size puts.
2 for 2, and then, but we're also 2 for 2 that they traded 47 cents and they're offered at 45. All you want.
Yeah, I'm sure they're loving that.
Yeah, like you buy 3,000 or you buy 9,000, and then you can buy more at a cheaper price. Like, so I don't know what to make of that, except the liquidity provider or anybody they have definitely some. They are feeling good.
Yeah, they got some to go, I guess. That's kind of weird. Yeah, you think when someone comes and takes it all that they would want to jack them up a little bit, but apparently they got more bullets in the gun. we got 100,000 more. You want them?
So anyway, I think that's that's what we got on the whole enchilada here. So anyway, I think this is just it's got to be the same customer. They have some axe to grind here, or maybe they bought stock they want to protect with puts. But either way, it's there was no problem selling them these puts. Now I did see another 3,500 of the 23s in July traded on a block, so I thought that was kind of interesting. But again, they're definitely buying these property stocks. I don't know what they're expecting, but they're definitely expecting some apocalyptic property mayhem.
They're expecting some annihilation. Yeah, I guess they didn't get the news that it's supposed to buy stocks today, not sell them all.
Yes, they did not get the news.
Let's go out one more here. Let's flip the script, listeners. We've been talking about a lot of puts. You gotta search a little bit these days. Our chat's debating the best sequels of all time now. My producers are weighing in. It's a whole contentious thing, listeners. They're distracting me with their debates. All right, let's go out to this last one here. Let's go out to Mr. Uncle Mike. You'll like this one. Tune in for this one, sir. You're going to like it. This is Pan American Silver Corp. We actually went and found some call action. You got to dig a bit. This is ticker symbol PAAS. No, not the folks who make all those cool Easter egg kits you use once a year. This is Pan American Silver Corp, ticker symbol PAAS. Trading right now, $23.92, up nearly 8.25% today. So a nice pop for PAAS on the year. Let's see. They were trading 33.33 a year ago. It's pretty much all downside for them until February, pretty much. They hit their low for the year, $20.50, right around beginning of February. And then they rallied hard up until April 13th, nearly $30 there, $29.95. Then they sold off hard again to $21.01 on May 12th. Actually, $20.50. That was their low for the year. And then they have rallied since up to $23.92. So a nice week or two here for PAAS, and a good day as well. Nice pop today. What did we find out there? We found some calls. Someone actually likes some calls again. In particular, some pretty beefy calls. These are the OC25s going up 7,123 times, lifting the offer for $2.30. This is a 42 vol. The stock was actually a little lower, so these are looking better. These are 23.68, and when they bought them, the stock's almost a little over 23.90 right now. Of course, there are earnings between now and October. The next announcement is August 10th. Mr. Uncle Mike, are you familiar with PAAS, a.k.a. Pan American Silver Corp? What do you think about someone coming in and scooping the OC25s for the offer, $2.30, sir?
That's a lot of money to pay for that call, I think. So there's definitely some conviction there, and I am not familiar with this underlying. I tend to stick to if I want to trade commodities, I'm a simple-minded guy. I trade commodities.
That's so boring. Why trade SLV when you could trade related names that you may or may not know about?
True.
Add a little spice to the old portfolio, sir. So there we go. Got a little bit of pause. You want some call love? We gave it for you. In silver, are you feeling a lot of aggressive upside in silver? We have talked about some weird, I think when Uncle Mike was last on TWIFO, we talked about some weird upside levels. I think there were the 40s and maybe the 50s we were talking about towards later in the year in the silver futures options. We'll have to find out more in TWIFO coming up in a little bit, listeners. As we keep on rolling, it is time for you folks to take the reins. It is time for the mail block.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the mail block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the mail block. Because we have such an intense debate going on with our pro folks about the best sequels, we're going to do a flash poll, let our audience decide. 1 hour flash poll, get it up there. Maybe we'll put out Godfather Part 2. That's a good one. We have suggestions for T2. Empire, of course, is kind of the one everyone picks, and maybe one other. Pick your poison out there. Let our audience decide the greatest sequel of all time. Meanwhile, speaking of what our audience is deciding, I mentioned our question of the week at the top of the show. We're asking you folks, listeners, quite simply, Vol of Vol, a.k.a. VVIX, is back below 100 for the first time in over a year. Is this the start of a new vol regime for the market, or is this just the calm before the next volatility storm? Gave you three choices. This is the start of a new vol regime. This is the calm before the storm, or vol of vol is just confusing. Let's go out to Uncle Mike first, just for fun. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, we've been talking about this a little bit, this whole vol of vol thing. It is kind of interesting to pay attention to, and we are even lower now than we were a week ago. What are your thoughts on vol of vol being so low? And then if you have a vote in our poll, what do you think it is? And B, more importantly, what do you think our audience is up to?
I think it's going to continue. I think it's going to be lower, and I think the audience agrees with me. So vol of vol is interesting. I mean, where else but America can you come up with an invention to where you can trade volatility on volatility and have it be just a simple product? Very fascinating.
Yeah, our flash poll is live. We're already getting write-ins for Toy Story 2. Got to admit, not my favorite sequel. If I got to go for a Toy Story sequel, it's definitely Toy Story 3. I think Toy Story 2 is to put it mildly, garbage. But hey, who am I to say such things? Let's go on out to the land of the rockingest of lobsters. Mr. Rock Lobster, sir, what are your thoughts on our poll? And then B, what do you think our audience is voting for? And C, if you have a favorite sequel, have at it.
I think a vol of vol. I think the audience is looking for a pop in the vol of vol. But right now, I think it's vol of vol is probably the best signal you have. So when VIX is this high and the vol of vol is this low, I would say that overall the vol of vol will win in the trend. So I think we're going to see a lower VIX and a lower vol of vol, to be quite honest with you. And the best sequel, and there's no debate really about the best sequel, it's Godfather Part 2, which is really a prequel sequel.
Really? You're a Godfather guy too? That one comes up a lot. I kind of go back and forth. There are good parts of that. There are parts I like less. Godfather Part 1 is so iconic. Hard to press to think of the iconic moments from, I mean, I guess the Fredo stuff. But outside of that, spoiler alert for 30-year-old movie, whatever. But yeah, I guess, I mean, it's in there. Our audience will decide. Let's see right now. Speaking of what our audience will decide, in terms of it's a split vote right now for the Flash poll, 25% for Empire, 25% for T2, 25% for Godfather Part 2, and 25% for other. You got to get in there quickly, Liz. This is the Flash poll. This will be done. Just changed again. Empire and other are now tied with 33% each, and T2 and Godfather fall in by the wayside. One write-in for Toy Story 2. I'm not sure that's going to make crack the top, listeners, but if you want to write in Top Gun, get in there right now. This is the reason why you should be following us on @options if you aren't already listening. We have all sorts of fun stuff going up there, including Flash polls on sequels. Inspired by our listeners. Don't blame me. But actually, our actual question of the week right now, again, 3 choices: start of the new Vol regime, the calm before the storm, or Vol of Vol is confusing. If you vote for that last one, I wouldn't blame you. But right now, 69% of you saying the calm before the storm. So you're thinking there is another shoe to maybe drop out here, and perhaps all this green on the screen. You're not buying what Uncle Mike's putting down about the low being in a couple of weeks ago. You think the Vol storm still approacheth. Interesting. 17.2% of you saying this is the start of a new, presumably lower Vol and Vol of Vol regime. And 13.8% of you saying Vol of Vol is confusing. I'm with you. I get it. It can be crazy. Get in there @options to make your voice heard. We haven't pinned it for you. Tell you what, we will pin it right now. That way you guys can find it a little bit more easily. If you're just coming in, if you're listening after the fact on the podcast, you will have time to vote. We will give you the final results tomorrow on volatility views. Oh, actually, speaking of our results, our poll from last week, this one was hotly debated on VolTwit, which is kind of the point of these polls. We like to engender some conversation. And we asked you last week, we've already asked you, I said, about your buy-in levels for SPX and SPY. Many of you were also waiting for the vol spike before you dive back into these markets. What level do you think VIX has to hit to signal concession in the broad markets? And after a lot of back and forth, 42.8% of you chose north of 40. So you didn't need, that was pretty much the lowest level in our poll. So you need a decent vol level. Actually, obviously, VIX north of 40 is substantial, but the lowest level on our poll here. VIX north of 50 came in second with 24.1%. Then north of 70 at third with 21.7%. And no love for north of 60, only 11.4%. A lot of you were chiming in with different suggestions. Something doesn't need to happen at all. Just a modest spike up to a little bit north of 30 to 35. Maybe we'll do it. So a lot of different points of view on this, which is, again, what makes it interesting and what makes a market. In fact, we had, like I said, the once in future and present Dr. VIX. He just came back from a bunch of international vol conferences. And usually these things, listeners, I've been to a bunch of them here in the States. And usually it's a handful of strategies that are being debated on stage, or everyone just has awakened to the glory of selling puts, or is some sort of analysis of VIX calls versus S&P puts. Granted, a lot of those were SIBO events, so that kind of colors the products they're going to talk about a little bit. But Dr. VIX was saying it's kind of all over the place. He said there was not one strategy that was repeated. Everyone seems to have a different thought, a different outlook, a different strategy on the mind right now, which is kind of fascinating and also emblematic of where we are in the market right now. No one really knows anything. And so everyone's kind of shooting in the dark, which kind of makes it fascinating and perhaps a little bit scary. So keep your powder dry if you are curious out there. Let's go out one more question here. Let's go to so many here. I don't think we have time for a whole thing about calendars. Let's go to Jay Stankovich. He says, are we seeing the same mad scramble for puts now that we saw for calls last year? Well, look at our odd block. Again, that's just anecdotal evidence. I haven't gone and crunched the exact numbers for how much of the ADV is puts versus calls. We can do that and get you a reliable number. Just anecdotally, what we're seeing and coming across the network right now. In terms of the big blocks, the big action, the stuff that's going to catch our eye here on the network, that stuff is decidedly skewing towards the puts. Just look at today. We had to scramble to find a size call to talk about, listeners. So, yeah, I would say look at these names. I mean, these are near dated sizable put purchases we were just talking about in names that should be sleepy, like REITs. So I don't know. It's up to you whether you call that a mad scramble, but I would call paying up through the offer in some cases for very near dated puts in things like REITs kind of a bit of a mad scramble. You're worried about something. And that's not the only name we've seen that in. We've seen that in financials and a bunch of others. So I would say anecdotally, yes, Jay Stankovich. But again, we got to go crunch the numbers for the industry wide to give you an accurate total out there. But right now, just anecdotally, what we're seeing coming across our screens here, shows like Oddities and other shows on the network, I would say the answer, Jay Stankovich, is a resounding yes.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
Welcome to Around the Block, the portion of the show where we... our chat, where we... what do we do here? I'm getting distracted by all our people here. This is the portion of the show where we tell you what we're watching for the rest of the week until we gather here together on Monday. I'm also distracted by the one and only Uncle Mike because he wrote in a decidedly incorrect answer for our flash poll. He wrote in Rocky 3. Everyone, Uncle Mike, everyone knows Rocky 4 is the superior film, sir.
I respectfully disagree. Don't get me wrong. I love Rocky 4.
I must break you.
It's really cool. I love it. You won't find a bigger, outside of Sylvester Stallone himself, you will not find a bigger Rocky fan.
Greatest training montage, perhaps montage of cinematic history, sir.
I don't know, because I mean, just the whole spirit of Rocky. He lost his eye of the tiger, and then his former enemy helps him get it back. I mean, that's a lot of Americans, myself included, can identify with that. And so that movie, actually, I remember playing a bad game my senior year of college, and I was really stressed that I might not get a shot at going pro. And then I saw that movie, and then seeing Adrian say, you're the one that's going to have to live with yourself if you think this way. And that inspired me like it inspired Rocky, and it changed my life. So, I mean, it's a deep personal connection to me with Rocky 3, but Rocky 4 is also an excellent film as well.
I will say this. I haven't seen Rocky 3 in quite some time, and my memories are much stronger for Rocky. I saw that in theaters as a young kid, and that was obviously height of the Cold War. So whenever Rocky is winning, I've never seen a theater lose their mind that much. They were going crazy. I was a little kid. I was like, what is happening? And then when Rocky's losing, the people were sitting down, hunched in their seats, no sound to be heard. It was an amazing theatrical experience. So maybe that colors it for me a little bit as well. I have not seen Rocky 3, and I need to go back and watch all the Rockies again. So I'll tell you what, Uncle Mike, I will be charitable to you. I do think you are wrong, but I will go watch Rocky 3 again. To make sure. In the meantime, while we're debating that, sir, as you have voted in our poll, what are you watching for the rest of the week, sir?
And real quick, a side note on Top Gun, people cheered in the theater that I was at, but that's St. Charles, so who knows? But anyway. So I'm watching the S&P 4200. Like I said, I think that's a pretty big number. If we can get through that, that could mean some more bullishness to come. So watching that, continuing to watch the 10-year, we're really close to the yearly lows on the 10-year right now. So watching that as well, watching the headlines, because we haven't had a good scary headline in a while. And folks, the VIX is at 24, can easily go to 44 at the drop of a hat. So just be wary of that and be prepared for what your risk management is and any type of trading with which you have. So watching that. And, that's what I'm watching right now.
I want you to give us a quick, too. Where can folks go if they want to learn more about all things Uncle Mike and debate you on Rocky 3, sir?
For sure. A couple things. You can go to my website, stcharleswealth.com. You can contact me that way. Follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW if you are looking for a financial advisor who knows both options and Rocky.
And has dubious taste in Rockies. But hey, we could do a whole other poll. What is the best Rocky? Oh, so many rabbit holes we can go down. Mr. Rock Lobster. That music means we have come to an end. So really quickly, what are you keeping an eye on? You say you're not going to be on Vol Views tomorrow. So what are we keep an eye on through the rest of the week into the weekend until Monday's show on the option block? And B, if folks want to learn more about you guys, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, well, you never know about Mark and Vol Views on Fridays. You never know what he's going to. By the way, isn't Rocky 3 the one where Apollo Creed dies?
No, that's 4. That's 4. That's what I said. 4 is the best one.
I
get those confused a lot too. You don't think of the 4th outing of a series being the best. But in the case of Rocky, it very much is.
I can't even remember what 3 is then.
That's Mr. T. Exactly. See? My point exactly.
Pretty good.
I pity the fool.
Mr. T was good, but Apollo Creed dying. That was a stake to
that was something. That was one of that whole. I watched that entrance scene again recently. His walkout, his dance out, I should say. It's amazing stuff. Yeah. But I digress.
Anyway, great character. That guy should have got an Academy Award for that role. Anyway, so yes, I think Vol will be lower, I think Vol lower, and I think we're going to see 4,200 this week because you know what? It's a Friday, and Friday it's Algo Friday, so they grab whatever news snip they can do, and off we go. So that's what I'm watching for. And I'm starting to expect lower vol, but the crazy thing is intraday vol is still very high. So I think that's this market, like when TOSAW was channeling the cat in the hat, where you see the vol, where it goes that kind of stuff. I agree with them. It could be, 20 or 44 on any day at this point. So just be mindful of that. And go to optionpit.com. Call Ted 888-TRADE-01, 10% off any product at Option Pit. We're growing by leaps and bounds because we teach people about options and how to trade them. And we're trading it ourselves every day. So we do all the same trades. And people like to learn that way. So anyway, if you want to learn how to trade options, come to optionpit.com. Call Ted, tell him I am the most handsome guy in options, and I now have to go teach a class.
You go, as our chat will continue debating the best movie. Hang out a little bit, get a beverage. We'll be back in about 25 minutes, listeners, with the man himself, Mr. Dan Grams. I can't think of a better person to pick their brains on all these different crazy commodities that are swinging wildly all over the place. I'm guessing he'll probably have some thoughts on the broad equity levels as well. You don't want to miss this. If you're listening live, stay tuned, listening after the fact. Hit next on your device of choice. TWIFO should be there waiting for you, hopefully, depending upon when you listen to the option block. And, of course, back again tomorrow for Volatility Views. Then for all you cool cats in the Secret Club, back again after that for Options Oddities. Then back again on Monday, another episode of the Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.